Hello everyone, FPL Raptor here and welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. In today's video we have my double Game Week 37 team selection. The bench boost is active, but I currently have at least 2 flag players and I'm almost definitely going to be taking a hit this week. So we'll discuss my possible transfer plans, the players that I'm looking at and much more. If you do enjoy today's video, please do smash that like button, and if you're new around here, make sure to subscribe as well. But without further ado, let's jump into it. So guys, wasting absolutely no time at all today, jumping straight into my Game Week 37 team selection. And I do have the bench boost active, therefore there is no formation this week. All 15 players count. I will discuss at the end what my likely bench would have been, because it doesn't really matter, right? All 15 players score points, but it's good to know how many points your bench boost actually got you. I've currently got 5.2 million in the bank, so lots of money and flexibility to move to pretty much whoever I want to, but only the one free transfer. And therefore, as you'll see when we look at my team, I'm almost definitely taking a -4 hit this week, I'd imagine. I've even looked at a -8, and there is like a 10% possibility of a -12, which I'm hoping you'll talk me out of in the comments. My current rank is 52k. I'm 2 points off the top 50k. And my rank target all season has been top 50k. I would be absolutely delighted to finish there considering the start to the season that I had. So in my mind, there's a few things going on before we actually look at the players in terms of what I'm trying to achieve right now. Ideally, I just want to achieve top 50k because top 25k is quite a way away for me. I'd have to really nail a couple of differential options. And to be honest, if my rank says 24 versus like 47, for me, there's not that much between it. Realistically, after 50k, I'm looking at top 10k is kind of the next big milestone, and I'm just never going to get there. So I want to have fun with the final 2 weeks, but I don't feel like I'm massively chasing. There aren't that many important mini leagues that I'm currently second or third in. I'm winning a lot of them, and the ones that I actually am second or third, I'm quite a way behind. So really, I'm not necessarily chasing anything. I'd like to just finish the season with a couple of green arrows, finish in the top 50k, and that would be my 3rd season in a row in the top 50k. We finished 10k last year, 10.1k. I was literally like 0 points outside the top 10k. 35k the year before that, and then whatever we finished this year. So to get to top 50k 3 years in a row would be a really good finish for me. So that's sort of where I am with respect to my target. I'm not chasing massively, but I do need 1 or 2 green arrows in the final couple of weeks, and I don't really want to fall too much further. So, as I said, the bench boost is active, and therefore all 15 players count, and therefore I need to obviously remove any players that are injured or potentially injured, and I need to make sure that I don't have any players that I just don't think will feature at all. And I think that I'm looking at my team right now, and you'll see when we get through my entire team, I'm looking at like 2, 3, 4 issues, but only 1 or 2 major issues. So my team's not in an awful spot. I think the issue that I've got with me is because I'm obviously a bit of a perfectionist and I'm also a content creator, I'm comparing my teams to like the best teams out there, the people that have wildcarded in 35. Considering that I didn't wildcard in 35, I wildcarded in 30, my team's not in an awful spot. I own a lot of the key players, but there are just a few places where I would obviously like to improve it. So let's start with the goalkeepers. I've got Raya and Petrovic. I would argue that on a free hit, Petrovic may well be the best goalkeeper you could choose this week. And I think if I were choosing a fresh this week, I would definitely have Petrovic as well. Or I think I would at least. So I really like Petrovic. I have at least 1 Chelsea option in the defence if I choose to sell Gusto, which I'll discuss in a second. So Petrovic, very, very happy with. No need to sell him. He will start for me. Obviously, he will need to in Game Week 37. And then Raya will be my keeper that would technically be part of my bench boost. In any normal week, you'd play Raya, but obviously he only has the 1 fixture. Maybe this is a bit of a narrative I'm trying to build in my head because I know I'm keeping Raya and Raya will be on my bench boost. But the issue that we've got with Raya in terms of why he hasn't been like an elite keeper this year is he just doesn't make any saves. The amount of times this season Raya has got 0, 1 or potentially even 2 saves, he's just not... Because Arsenal don't concede the chances, right? They are so good at controlling games. And even when they don't fully control the game, their defensive partnership of Saliba and Gabriel, and obviously having White, Tomiyasu, whoever it is in defence, they just don't allow many shots on goal. And for that reason, Raya doesn't make the amount of saves required to get the bonus points, the saves points, and he doesn't get those big boy scores. He'll get you 6, maybe 7 sometimes. However, for all you could say about Manchester United, because let me tell you, Manchester United are truly awful, and we'll discuss that throughout the video because it is very important. They will get shots. They will get opportunities, regardless of how good Arsenal are. It's at Old Trafford. There should be, I would hope, at least 2, 3, maybe even 4 saves for Raya here. So if he does keep a clean sheet, he could even be in for maybe a couple of bonus points, and you could be looking at a 7, 8, even 9 pointer from Raya. I've got a sneaky, weird feeling that United could score here. I don't expect them to from like a logical, objective standpoint. Arsenal are brilliant, Manchester United aren't particularly good. but it's just a feeling that I've got. Maybe it's just a bit of like emotional bias, sentimentality, hoping that this will turn into some sort of goal fest and be a really good game. Because, like I said, objectively, logically, if you're looking at the data market odds, everything is pointing towards Man United getting very few opportunities and Arsenal probably keeping a clean sheet. So I'm going to back that because I'm a data-driven manager. And let's just say that we think Arsenal have a very good chance for a clean sheet, maybe even more so than some of the teams that double. So very happy with Raya. And on that note, I also have Ben White. So I will be bench boosting with double Arsenal defence against Manchester United away, which in any other season, I would say that is an absolutely awful move. But this is the season of the Arsenal defence. I mean, they have been truly astonishing, and we continue to back that. And I don't think Raya will make tons of saves, but with Ben White, you don't only have the clean sheet potential, he's also been fairly attacking recently. I mean, he scored a brace in Gameweek 34, which luckily enough I managed to get. And when I watch Arsenal, Gabriel and Saliba have attacking threat, by the way, especially from set pieces. And Arsenal score so many goals from set pieces, by the way. But from open play, Ben White just gets incredibly involved. The amount of times I see him overlap Bukayo Saka and get to the byline. So there could even be the chance for an attacking return here from Ben White. So in all honesty, surprisingly, which like I said, you wouldn't normally expect, I'm actually really happy to have Raya and White this week. And remember, it's not only about Game Week 37. And I'll try to keep explaining that in this video because I need to remind myself too. There are 2 game weeks left. And yes, Game Week 37 certainly has the highest upside because lots of teams double. But 38, some of the fixtures are better. And also, there are usually lots and lots of goals and lots of hauls in Game Week 38. And that might not suit the defenders necessarily, but Arsenal are always good for a clean sheet. They've got a home game, and you could get a monster score from some of these players. So I guess in the back of my mind, I need to keep reminding myself, 37 isn't the only week. This isn't the final week of the season. We also have Game Week 38. And Raya and White are really good for Game Week 38 also. So very happy to have those 2. Another player that I'm very happy to have is Gvardiol. You would say probably now, maybe very tight with De Bruyne, but probably the 3rd best City asset after Haaland and Foden. And I think, again, if you were on a free hit and you had free choice this week, you would probably be on Haaland, Foden, and one of Gvardiol or KDB. I think KDB's great. He certainly, for me, has the highest upside. He's the sort of player that can go absolutely massive. We've seen it in the past. He's certainly more exciting than Gvardiol. But Gvardiol is absolutely nailed at the moment, at least from, I shouldn't have said that, I've completely jinxed that, but he looks very good for minutes at the moment. Lots of attacking threat, passing the eye test. He just looks brilliant. I expect him to start both games, which I don't normally say with confidence for a City defender. And I'm very, very happy to have him. And I do think he's the best City defender to own at the moment. He is quite highly owned, so I think if you're chasing now, you could back against him and go for someone like a Walker, or even maybe try and mix it up even more than that, or just go for, like I said, triple City attack. But for me, in the position that I'm in, very happy to have Gvardiol. And then the other defender that I'm very happy to have is Dan Burn. I don't think Dan Burn's going to go absolutely massive in this double. I think he might get one return, whether that be a clean sheet or an attacking return. And that would be okay. To be honest, I'm not expecting much from many of the defenders this week. So if Dan Burn can get me anything, at least not get me minus points in any of the games, I would be very, very happy with that. I actually think, increasingly so, these 2 fixtures don't look too bad from a defensive perspective. Again, Brighton have been so poor attacking recently, and we'll discuss that when we move on to my attack. And also United, whilst they do create chances, they are struggling to put the ball in the net on a consistent basis. So I do look at that, and I think there is the chance for one clean sheet there. So, those are the defenders I'm happy with. Let's just recap. Petrovic, Raya, White, Gvardiol, and Dan Burn. They will not be sold for me, which leads to 2 potential issues in my team. Fabian Schär and Malo Gusto. I'll start with Schär because this is the easiest one for me. Schär will be transferred out for a defender, and I'll discuss my watch list after we've looked at my team, but Schär looks like he's out for the season, still hasn't been pictured in full team training. Even if he was pictured in training now, I'd still probably sell Fabian Schär because he wouldn't start both. So he will be sold for me, and he will definitely be my free transfer. So everything after Fabian Schär being transferred out is going to be a hit for me. So that has to be kept in mind, that I don't have a free transfer to use elsewhere. So Fabian Schär will become another defender. And again, I'll discuss my watch list after we've looked at my entire team. Then I come on to Gusto. Now, I discussed Chelsea in quite a lot of detail in the Game Week preview video. I don't normally plug my videos too much, but I would genuinely go and watch my Game Week preview video, which I uploaded on Thursday, I think it was. Now I'm losing track with what the days are. But I would go and watch that because I discussed whether I would sell Gusto to try and get Jackson in, whether I think Gusto will start 1 or 2 in the double. But my general consensus on this is I think that Gusto probably starts 1, But if you had to ask me, is it more likely he starts 0 or 2? I think it's more likely he starts 0, because essentially what Chelsea are doing at the moment is they're playing a similar system to what we've seen with Arsenal and Man City, where they're playing with one of their fullbacks inverting, and that's actually Cucurella on the left side at the moment. And what that means is if Cucurella inverts into midfield, Chelsea are essentially playing with a back three, where the right back becomes a right centre back. So what you're telling me is either Cucurella gets dropped and Gusto becomes the one to invert. Gusto plays right centre-back, essentially, which isn't a perfect position for him at all. Or they completely ditch this system that's working very well for them, and they switch back to a traditional back four with Gusto and Cucurella, sort of traditional right back and left back. In my opinion, it's more likely they just stick with what's going well. So they either shoehorn Gusto into that right centre-back role, obviously right back on paper, right centre-back when in possession, or Gusto just doesn't start. So I think Gusto might get one game, and if I was to predict, it would be the Brighton game. He could get two, but I think it's more likely he just doesn't get any, and they continue with the system that they've got and play the likes of Badiashile, Disasi, Chalobah, Thiago Silva, etc., who are all centre-backs. So let me know down below if you disagree with that, Chelsea fans. The thing that's in the back of my mind, right, is Gusto is absolutely brilliant, and he has been very good for Chelsea this season. One of their best players, probably in their top 5 players in the Premier League this season. So maybe Pochettino will just see this and say, Gusto's back fit and available, let's just get him into the team. Because essentially what you're saying is Gusto that much worse of an option at right centre-back on the ball, progressing the play than some of these other defenders? He's probably not. And you're expecting Chelsea to probably hold a lot of the ball in these games, and having someone like Gusto, who's great with the ball at his feet and can bring the ball forward, as I said, and progress into midfield, he's probably not going to do an awful job at that sort of right centre-back role. So in my head, I'm also thinking, I wouldn't say it's out of the question that he gets 2. Let's go off the basis that I think he gets 1, though. It then becomes, is it worth moving Gusto to another defender? Is it worth taking a hit, and again, it would be for a hit, to remove him and bring in another defender that doubles that you know will start 2? Someone like a Romero or a Dunk, you just know they'll get 2 games. Is it worth making that move? I still don't know. It's almost a rhetorical question. I'm not sure. The thing that I would say is, if I remove Gusto, well, then I'm probably going to want to bring in Jackson, because spoiler alert, if you haven't seen my team before, I don't have Jackson in there. Gusto would free up the Chelsea spot to then allow me to move Jackson. So I think if I decide to sell Gusto, it then would also force me almost to then want to bring in Jackson too. So it's something that I need to think about. I'm probably currently leaning towards saying that I don't think I'll sell Gusto, and that I'll hope he gets 1 start and does well, and maybe gets either minutes off the bench or maybe gets a second start. But I'm not predicting 2 starts at the moment. And therefore, I am wondering, I've got Gusto here, who I think will get 20 minutes against Forest and then 70 minutes against Brighton. Could I do better than that for a hit? We'll discuss in a little bit more detail when we look at my defender options to bring in this week, because maybe that will make it a little bit easier. But that's the situation of the defence. Basically, it's not in a great position, but I'm happy with most of it. Cher will become another defender we'll discuss a bit later. And then Gusto, I've got the option of if I want to remove him as well. So that's the defence. Let's move on to the midfield. So moving on to the midfield 5, and it's not fantastic, but it's also not awful. It could certainly be worse. And again, I'm getting in this headspace of like, my team's got to look perfect on paper, and realistically, it's just not going to. I wildcarded 7 or 8 weeks ago. I've had injury issues to deal with, so it's not going to be the perfect team, but it's also not too far away from where I'd want to be. I think 3 of the 5 midfielders are honestly absolutely fine, and I think most of people will either already own them or look to own the 3 of them going into Game Week 37, which is Son, Palmer, and Foden. I think on Sonny, he's not been in fantastic form, but he's got 2 home fixtures. The sort of game City at home is a game you could see him scoring in, and really the game that you own him for is that Burnley at home one, because if you look at the teams that double, that is the best fixture of the bunch. All of the other teams don't really have a fixture that good, other than maybe the teams that play against Manchester United, but I really do like Son's fixtures in this double. I think they suit him quite well, and I expect him to honestly do quite well. On Palmer, Palmer's definitely better at home, by the way, and this is the only reason, genuinely, that I'm not really probably going to end up captaining him. If one of the 2 was at home, I'd be very tempted to captain. If both were at home, I would captain him ahead of Haaland, because I think he's that good at home. And he's not bad away from home, but he's just not got that same level of output. And I also don't think they are terrible defensively, Forest and Brighton. So I think Palmer will do well. I think he'll get some returns, but I just don't think he's going to go big enough for me, given they're both away, to justify captaining him this week. But I'd love to know down below if anyone is considering a captaincy on Cole Palmer. And on Phil Foden, again, Foden is a player that is better at home too. City are better at home, but I also think he could do fairly well. And I just think he's blanked quite a bit recently. He's also had, obviously he didn't fully blank, but in comparison to some of the other players, he's had a couple of games where he was injured, then he was ill. I think Phil Foden has dropped down in some people's estimations just because he's not gone big recently, but he still has that in his locker. City is still going, obviously, for the league. They need to win all of their games probably, given how well Arsenal are playing. So I expect Foden to do very well in this double too. So the three of them, honestly, all three of them are captaincy shouts, and I don't have any desire to take the three of them out. So Son, Palmer, Foden, big thumbs up from me. Where it then goes downhill is the fact that I currently own two Manchester United midfielders in Garnacho and Fernandes. So I really was hoping, I actually delayed my team selection video by an entire day in the hope that we would get Fernandes news on Thursday. And sadly, at the time of me recording this, we have very little. And the annoying thing about that is it kind of impacts quite a few things in my team, whether Fernandes is fit or not. So in the next 2 minutes, I'll discuss possibilities for all of the, whether he's fit, whether he's not. And if you're watching this knowing the news, then obviously that's the direction that I'll end up going in. So if Fernandes is fit and available, I will keep Fernandes, I will keep Garnacho, I will start both, and I will be very happy. So if he gets fully cleared, he's back in training, he's absolutely fine, then there's just no need for me to sell him because I know they're not too good fixtures. And I know Manchester United aren't playing well, but Fernandes has been hauling recently when United have been that bad. And same with Garnacho. Garnacho still gets returns and he still gets the chances. So I think if Fernandes is fit, no transfers will take place in my midfield, I think. However, if Fernandes is a major doubt or ruled out, I think I'll remove him. Even if it's like, oh, he might be in training, he might be available. I just don't think I'm willing to risk it on a bench boost because you can't afford for a player to miss out. And I also don't think his double is that perfect that it's worth the risk of him maybe not being available. So basically, the only time I'll end up keeping Fernandes is if he is fully cleared as fit. If he has any doubt, I think I'll remove him. And I don't even need to go to my watch list section to show you this. It's going to be Richarlison. I just think Richarlison is going to go really big in this double. And to be honest, if Fernandes is out, I'm quite happy about that because I actually really like the idea of getting Richarlison into my team. And if he's cleared as fit, then I probably won't be able to do it. I just think Richarlison has such incredible goal threat. I really like the Burnley fixture for him. I think he'll start. Also, Sheffield United in Game Week 38 as well. I'd love to get Richarlison into my Game Week 37 team. So that would be my transfer. It would be for a -4 hit, Fernandes to Richarlison if Fernandes is a doubt or unavailable. The question then comes is, if Fernandes is out, does that make Garnacho a sell for another hit? And I think probably yes, but my thing is I don't really have another midfielder that I'd want to move to. Lots of people point to the fact that I don't have Gordon. And again, Garnacho to Gordon is probably an upgrade, and it is probably something that could pay back the hit. But Gordon is so highly owned now that it's not really a move that excites me. I'm bringing in a player that's going to be like 70% ownership. Even if he does well, it's not something that I'll feel particularly rewarded by or I'd be particularly excited by. So why not back a lowly owned Garnacho? Because I don't expect United to score against Arsenal. They probably won't score many against Newcastle. But all I need is probably one return, saving the 4-point hit. And Gordon would have to get 2-3 returns to make it worth it. So I do think it's probably worth selling Garnacho. And by the way, it wouldn't have to be Gordon that I'd move to. There are some other options that I could consider, like an Adingra or a Gross could be decent. But when I'm looking at that, I'm like, well, I might as well just keep Garnacho at that point. So probably the most likely situation is if Fernandes is fit, keep both. If Fernandes is a doubt or injured and ruled out, I'll remove Fernandes for Richarlison. And in any situation, I think the plan is to keep Garnacho, but I am fully aware that it's probably not the right move and that moving into another player for a -4 may well pay off. I'll decide how I feel about that close to the deadline, but that's the midfield situation. I'd love to know what you would do. Would you remove Garnacho for an extra -4 hit? Let's now move on to the 3 forwards, discuss my watch list, and then discuss what my 15 players is most likely going to look like. So guys, moving on to the 3 forwards, and again, similar to the midfield, it looks okay, not great, but it definitely could be worse. So I currently have 3 doubling forwards, which is good. Isak, João Pedro, and Haaland. The armband is currently on Haaland. The reason for that is, like I said, I'm actually only 2 points away from my target, which is top 50k. If I was like 20 points off right now, I would probably take risks in Game Week 37. But the way that I'm approaching this is, let's try and have the best possible Game Week 37. Let's try and deal with it in the way that we think will get us the most points. And then if going into Game Week 38, I'm actually at that stage, let's say I have a poor Game Week 37 and I'm like 15, 20 points off where I want to be, well, then I know in Game Week 38, I need to take a massive risk with captaincy and with my transfer. But it may be that I have an absolutely cracking Game Week 37, and Haaland is the reason for that because I captained him and I didn't need to take the risk. So I kind of feel like at the moment, the risk doesn't need to be taking place with the captaincy for me in Game Week 37. I don't think this double is perfect for Haaland because he is better at home, but actually his away data this season is significantly better than it was last season. Last season, his away data was quite a bit of a drop-off from his home data. This season, for large spells, it's actually been slightly stronger. So I don't expect this to be a double where City put like 8 or 9 goals past Fulham and Spurs in combination. But I also don't think these are two defences that will completely shut City out. So I think Haaland captain is absolutely fine for me. And that's probably the way that I'm leaning right now. I do think another really good captaincy option would actually be Isak. He's got a home game and an away game. Obviously, the home game is the one that you'd expect him to do more in, but the away game against United is a great game on paper, as we spoke about when we spoke about the Arsenal assets. So I really like Isak. And to be honest, if I were to not captain Haaland, I think my armband might be on Isak. It'd be close between Isak and Palmer, but as I said, being 2 away fixtures for Palmer, I think it may well be Isak. But Isak's another player that I'm absolutely fine having. I know Wilson is back, looking fit. He could be on penalties now that Isak has missed one. And it could be that Isak gets benched in one game, but I just can't see it. He's playing so well. He looks very fit. And Eddie Howe has now shown that he's happy playing Isak and Wilson together, and it actually works quite well for Newcastle too. So I expect Isak to start all 3 remaining games for Newcastle. He's a perfectly good player to keep, and let's hope he's still on penalties as well. My third forward, the only other forward is João Pedro. Now, this is probably one of the weakest of my 8 attackers. If I do bring in, say, let's Richarlison for Fernandes, Garnacho and João Pedro are the 2 that stand out as just not being ideal options. And yeah, I would much rather have Jackson in that spot. I'd much rather have Wilson in that spot. Those are probably the only 2 that I would really much rather have. But also, João Pedro's not awful. I mean, Brighton aren't particularly good. They've barely scored any goals recently. As I said, I think in April, their goal of the month was actually an own goal. They're struggling to create. But João Pedro is still a really good FPL option for me because his underlying data is always relatively strong. I think he should still be on penalties. Having spoken to some Brighton fans, I know he missed his penalty or it was saved in Gameweek 36. But he still scored like 10 out of 11 penalties for Brighton. Pascal Gross's record isn't perfect. So I actually think João Pedro could still be on pens, and his minutes seem relatively secure at the moment too. I don't think these are 2 brilliant fixtures against Newcastle and Chelsea, but I don't think he's a bad option. And again, if I'm looking at maybe having a couple of players that are lowly owned that could shoot me up the ranks a bit, João Pedro is definitely one of those players. He was like 2% owned for me in Game Week 36. Not many people are going to look to bring him in. On a bench boost, you could definitely do worse. And if he just plays both games and gets me like 3 or 4 points, so be it. I don't think I'm going to want to make the move from João Pedro to Jackson because, like I said, it would involve removing Gusto and removing João Pedro, which would be at least a -8 hit this week. If I then have to sort out Fernandes as well, it's a -12 hit. And it just starts to get to a spot where, whilst I do think that Jackson is the better third Chelsea asset rather than Gusto, it's just not worth making all of those transfers for me. The other option I've got is because I'm removing Fabian Schär, is just doing João Pedro to Wilson. I honestly really like that quite a lot, but is Wilson 4 points better than João Pedro? Maybe, could be, potentially. But if Wilson only starts 1, which I think is a possibility, and Wilson, let's say, maybe isn't on pens, if João Pedro is on pens, then it's probably not a move that I'd necessarily want to make. So I think João Pedro might remain in my team, just due to the fact that I have Schär and maybe Fernandes to sort out. If I had no injury issues, let's say Schär was a different player and Fernandes didn't have any issues, I may well make that Gusto to Jackson switch, but I just don't know that I want to make it for a -8 hit in total. So that is the team. Just to recap sort of the issues, it's Schär, Gusto, Garnacho and Fernandes, and then João Pedro. Those are the issues in my team. I could conceivably remove all of them, and I think that would be a -16, but that seems silly. It doesn't seem necessary because you don't need the best team on paper. This is kind of a point that I've been trying to drive home all season. To do well in FPL, you have to own the wrong players at the wrong times. And I know that sounds like such a stupid thing to say, but if you were to try and build the best team every week, it doesn't end up playing out that way. It's always random players. Like Mateta's data going into Game Week 34 was awful, like genuinely awful. Gabriel's attacking threat was much better than Ben White's. But you get Mateta getting like 29 points, Ben White getting a crazy... Sometimes you have to own these players that data-wise it doesn't look perfect, or the fixtures aren't perfect on paper. No one predicted a Branthwaite 20-pointer, right? You would have rather had certain other players. So I look at it, and I'm not saying that means therefore you want to pick bad players, but if you go into a game week and you've got 2 or 3 players that just don't look as good as some other people's, they can easily outscore them. And I think Garnacho and João Pedro are absolutely fine. So whilst Schär, Gusto, Garnacho, Fernandes and João Pedro, I see them all as issues, Garnacho and João Pedro are probably going to stay for me just due to having other issues in my team that I want to sort. And I just think Gusto probably will end up staying as well, because I think he should start one and there's a chance he starts two. But if he does start none of them, then I obviously have made a major mistake there. So there's the small possibility he goes. Realistically, I'm just looking at Fabian Schär and Fernandes out. So let's take a look at my watch list and discuss in more detail, especially that defender spot, who I'm looking at potentially bringing in. So guys, take a look at my watch list for Game Week 37. This has been updated since my transfer plans video. A couple of other players that I'm looking at right now. Just very briefly before we look at the defenders, because I think that is the key spot for me. A transfer that I definitely know I want to make. On the midfielders and the forwards, if Bruno is out, it's basically Gordon or Richarlison. And I just think based on the fact that he's lower owned and I prefer the double for him, and I think he's a better FPL asset if he plays the same amount of minutes, by the way, I think Richarlison is probably going to be the one for me. I don't dislike Gordon. I think he's absolutely fine, but I just don't see that as an exciting transfer when most people already own him. So I'd rather back against Gordon and go for Richarlison on this occasion. So if Bruno is out or a major doubt, he will be moved to Richarlison for me. And in the forward spot, I don't think I want to remove João Pedro. But if I decide to, it's either going to be because I remove Gusto and I want to make the switch to get a third Chelsea asset and I'll go for Jackson. Or if I don't remove Gusto and I still want to remove João Pedro, I would probably just move him to Callum Wilson and just attack the upside that Callum Wilson always has had. He's just such a brilliant FPL option when he does play. So yeah, all of those options could come in for me. Most likely could probably just be Richarlison. On the defender situation, I'm definitely going to need at least one defender for Fabian Schär and then potentially a second if I decide that I do want to remove Gusto. So who's most likely to come in for me? The only player with one fixture here is actually Branthwaite. That's because it's Sheffield United at home. Everton have been very good defensively. My concern with this is both Everton and Sheffield United now have nothing to play for. So I could imagine this being a little bit looser than it would have been if Sheffield United was still battling and so were Everton to stay up. Whereas, obviously, Sheffield United are down and Everton are up now. So there's not as much of a need to be really secure defensively here. But I would still say Everton are still a good defence and Sheffield United are still a poor attack. So just because there's not as much to play for these two teams, it doesn't suddenly mean that Sheffield United are going to score like 4 goals. So I still think that Everton will have a good chance for a clean sheet here. But I would maybe be more tempted if Everton still had something to play for and they still had a reason to try and keep clean sheets and to stay tight at the back. Obviously, Everton players are still going to try. I just think it could be a little bit looser that game now. So Branthwaite's still an option for me, but considering he doesn't double, again, not overly exciting. So I'm looking at probably one of the other 4 options more likely. I have Cucurella on this list. Now, I said if I remove Gusto, it would probably be to try and move to Jackson. But that's not necessarily the case, right? It could be that I literally just do Gusto to Cucurella for a -4. If I think Cucurella starts both and Gusto maybe doesn't start any, well, then that's probably a transfer that will pay back. And Cucurella has been very, very good in recent weeks. I just think clean sheet-wise, I think they have a chance, but I don't know that it's overly likely. And then attacking threat-wise, because Cucurella is actually inverting into like defensive midfield, his attacking threat isn't that good in this new role that he's playing. He's not flying up the left wing and whipping in crosses. So I wonder how much Cucurella actually has the upside in this double. And if Gusto does start one, and that's the one that they maybe keep a clean sheet, well then Cucurella is not necessarily massively outscoring him. So I'd rather have Cucurella at the moment, but I don't know that he's worth the -4 over Gusto. And I obviously can't bring him in for Fabian Schär because I already have 3 Chelsea, if that makes sense. So I'm probably then looking at one of the other 3. And on my list, I've got 2 Spurs defenders and then Dunk. I don't think Dunk's a great move, considering I don't think Brighton keep a clean sheet, right? And that's the main reason you would have a defender, but no defenders really keep clean sheets other than Arsenal. And so Dunk does have a history of bullet headers. We know that he has a bit of a long shot in him from time to time as well. And Brighton's defensive numbers are okay. They could keep a clean sheet in this double. But the way that the 2 teams that they're playing against are attacking recently, I don't think that's as likely. So with the Brighton defenders, there's the chance for a clean sheet, maybe attacking threat. Veltman and Webster are other options I could go for, but I think because I've got lots of money and I don't have an issue. Look at me bragging about all my money. Because I've got money in the bank, I just go for Dunk for the safety of minutes. And also, like I said, the history of the bullet header from Dunk. So I like him as an option, but probably the 3rd most likely to come in for me, which leaves Porro and Romero as probably the 2 options that I'm most likely to go for. Now, Who am I more likely to go for at the moment? It probably is still Pedro Porro, because I think he's been very unlucky not to return recently. And I know some people have been frustrated. You don't own Porro necessarily for the clean sheets, it's for the attacking threat. And when he's not actually delivering on the underlying data, it can be frustrating. But his underlying data is still pretty decent. Because Maddison's minutes haven't been great and his performances haven't been, Porro's still taking a lot of set pieces as well. So he's got good underlying data on set pieces, good routes to points. And one of the games is Burnley at home. So I look at it and just think Pedro Porro is still a really nice option to bring into my team. However, in the last 6 games, Romero's actually had some really good attacking data. He's throwing himself at corners. He's popping up in all sorts of spots on the pitch. And Romero is definitely going to be lower owned than Porro. So if I'm just saying, maybe I just try and tap into the variance. I did this in Game Week 34. I literally went for Ben White because he was lower owned than Gabriel. And Ben White massively outscored him. You could see a similar situation here. Romero outscored Porro. I don't think anyone would be that shocked. So I could just try and go for the slightly lower owned option, go for Romero rather than Porro. But I just think Porro is a slightly better FPL option. I think I should bring in the one that I think is probably better. So at the moment, if you were forcing me to make a move now, I would do Fabian Schär to Porro, and I would probably do Bruno to Richarlison. So it would be a -4 hit to bring in 2 Spurs assets. That would then give me 3, and I know Spurs haven't been playing particularly well, but they've got Burnley and Sheffield United in the next 2 games, and I back them to do fairly well in those 2. I don't think they'll do much against City, but you also never know. We didn't think Everton would do much against Liverpool, and they kept a clean sheet, right? So it could be that they do something against City, but really you're in for those 2 other fixtures. So that is my planned set of moves at the moment. I don't know if those will be the ones I make because it largely depends on Bruno's fitness, and also if I decide I want to go for Romero. If I then want to remove Gusto as well then I have to go for either Cucurella or I go for like a dunk, which allows me to move in Jackson for João Pedro. So there are a few moving pieces here, but I think those 2 Spurs assets are the most likely to move in for me. I'd love to know what you think of that. What do you think of the team overall then? And yeah, how much does it differ from your team for Game Week 37? So guys, as always in these team selection videos, I also thought I would update you on how we are doing over at South London United as part of One Future Football. And as I always say very briefly at the start of this section, if you've got no idea what this is, stick with me, but also go watch the video down below where I explain what this is, because we are deep into this now, but it's such an exciting project that I would genuinely implore you to get involved in because it's so much fun. And everyone that's getting involved in this is loving it. So if you've got a spare 4 or 5 minutes, I will link down below the video explaining it, just so that I don't have to explain it in every single video. But I'm essentially a football manager for an AI-run virtual global football league. And it is honestly some of the most fun I've ever had getting involved in anything. So please do get involved with me in this. There is a video down below where I explain in more detail what this is. But we're currently going into round 8. And we have done incredibly well. So if you did miss last weekend, we had the first super weekend as part of One Future Football, where there are 3 games in one weekend rather than 1. And we actually managed to win 2 of the 3 games. We're up into 6th place now. So our 3 results were 3-1 against Bondi FC. We then lost 2-1 to Niger at Nigeria. It was quite a difficult away game. And then we won our 3rd game of the super weekend, 2-1 against Bengaluru Phoenix. So we are now in a very, very good position. 6 points from 9. Since switching to the 4 at the back, we've only lost 1 game. So I am absolutely loving this. We are performing so well. And I'm going to stick with this same team that I think is now my strongest 11. So if you're trying to get on board with South London United and you want to start learning the names of the players and where they play, I think this is the strongest 11 at the moment. So very briefly, Diaby has been brilliant for us. Tesselar at right back is brilliant. We do have another player called Salazar, but I think Tesselar is slightly better than him, and he is currently my favoured right back. Eke and Prasad have been absolutely just so solid at the back. So I love that pairing. And Noor, just the most consistent and reliable left back you could possibly hope to have. Imagine like prime Leighton Baines, but taller and stronger. That is Noor. I just absolutely love the man. In sort of defensive midfield or central midfield, we have Alcock, who never misses a minute. He's our vice captain. I absolutely adore him. He plays literally every available minute for us. Hasn't missed a minute this season. And then that Ogbamiro spot, I've been going around with a few of our different central midfielders, but at the moment, Ogbamiro deserves that spot. He's very athletic, he gets up and down the pitch, and he deserves to be in the starting 11. So he's got the nod at the moment. The star player in our team is Grondon, who's that attacking midfielder. He's just been dominating. Like, as you can see, in round 7, he got 92 out of 100, his rating. Grondon is just that guy. I love him so much, and he continues to perform well. And then we've got Sabri on the left and Moyano on the right. Both of these players extremely young, but extremely talented. So on a given day, you never know what you're going to get from them because they're not particularly experienced, but they create a hell of a lot. And then we've got the main man, Ruben Sinclair, up top. If you want to follow Ruben Sinclair, he's got all of his own social media as well. He posts all the time. He's definitely very opinionated. He's a character in the dressing room, but he's performing very well for us this season. So that's the team. This is now, I think, our strongest team at South London United. We've got a relatively tricky away game against Club Sportivo Palermo in round 8, but they've not started the season particularly well. So we go into this, actually, believe it or not, despite it being away, we're actually probably going into this as favourites now. I just want to give a big shout out to the best fans of the week. So Tiggy Time is actually the #1 trainer this week. So thank you very much. You can see all of the names on your screen. Thank you to all of you for training the players. If you are currently unaware what I mean by training, if you own a South London United player and you go to dashboard training, you can train those players up. And the more that you train them, the better they actually perform. So you are directly contributing towards helping South London perform to the best of their ability. So this is just such an exciting project. I'm bloody loving it. I love the fact that there are so many of you that are on board with it as well. If you are enjoying and on board with it, let me know down below in the comments. And if there are any questions that you'd like me to clear up, because I know it's quite a complicated thing to get into, please just ask me comments down below. And if I see anything South London United related, I'll reply immediately and I'll try to help explain anything that you're unsure on. But this is the team that we take into round 8. And I'm hopeful that we can pick up another 3 points. The game is on Sunday at 10 p.m. You can watch it live on YouTube. Hopefully I'll see some of you there. So guys, there we have it. That is my Game Week 37 team selection video, the penultimate one of the season. I get emotional when we get towards the end of the season, but I hope you did enjoy it, and I hope you enjoyed today's video. And if you did and you're still here, please do smash that like button. Let me know down below that you still watched to the end. Just say, Raptor, I still watched to the end. I do really appreciate it. Until next time, which will be later today, double upload the deadline decisions video. Thank you very much for watching. Bye-bye.